We're going to go live to the Gulf, and we are joined tonight by United States Congressman Jeff Fortenberry. Congressman, welcome to Drive Time Lincoln. Good to have you.
Thank you, Coby. Good to be with you.
You've been reviewing the impacts of the BP oil spill on the Gulf Coast. First of all, now, New Orleans Congressman Scalise invited you on this tour. Why don't you tell me why did he invite you, and where is it that you went today specifically?
Well, we have been over vast areas of fragile marshland. As you know, south of New Orleans is a fingerlet of islands and marshes and bays. And one of the most vulnerable areas is a place called Grand Isle, in that it's one of the land areas that is solid land, and it is one of the closest areas to the actual well that blew out. So they've been hit with oil coming ashore or coming from the deep water onto the shore. And it really is the front line of the land war against this oil spill and the consequential environmental damage. The people here are exhausting themselves to save their land, save their way of life, and to save this environment. And they're trying everything they can to put a Band-Aid on this gaping wound, and it's just really disheartening. But these are great Americans down here who are working hard and trying to protect really a national treasure in that this is a fragile ecosystem. It's important to our seafood industries, maritime, as well as oil and gas industries. But that's primarily what we've done today along the coast in a place called Grand Isle.
Congressman, do you think that the congressman invited you to go on this tour because he's starting to feel helpless?
Well, he had sent out a general invitation, and I actually jumped on it very quickly because I'm on the oversight committee. We have taken some oversight responsibility of this, particularly in looking at the early command and control problems that were made very evident in the first month or so, when it was not clear who was going to take charge, who was in charge, who was going to actually take the lead in trying to stop this, mitigate the environmental damage, and unpack the problems that existed with the regulatory agency that clearly had evidence of too cozy of a relationship with BP. BP had some clear indications that this well was going to be a problem, and they were ignored, and they behaved in a reckless manner, and why government oversight wasn't better is going to be an ongoing question, and that needs to be fixed. So I've got a relationship to it. Congressman Scalise is on another committee called Energy and Commerce, so they clearly have a responsibility for it as well. Part of the committee staff that I'm on have actually been here looking at various aspects of the policy problem before I got here. So we were joined by about a half a dozen of other members from around the country because clearly Americans are very worried, primarily about the environmental damage.
Congressman, how close to the oil itself did you get? Were you in an aerial tour, or were you actually on a beach someplace?
I was in a Black Hawk helicopter 100 to 200 feet above the marsh and above the Gulf. I was on a sheriff platoon-type boat. I actually went out and looked at a pelican rookery, one of the fragile estuaries that are out here among the marshes. In fact, you remember the pelican that was dripping in oil? That's the likely site where it came from. And I was actually on the ground itself, on the beachfront, and picked up oil with my own hand. Talked to some of the workers who were actually scooping it by shovel. So the beach here is contaminated. They've scraped about an inch off of it. Fingerlets, threads of oil are coming in from out in the open Gulf in an unpredictable manner. The wind, the tides, the rain, the unknown quantity of oil that has seeped into the ocean and how well it's dispersed are all complicating factors as to how to predict what's going to happen. So one of the other factors here is that the local community is, now that the command and control is sorted out, that's good, but they're highly frustrated with certain agencies of the government, the Corps of Engineers being one. They want to put rocks up across their open areas of the bay to protect the backside estuaries, the backside environment in the marsh areas that are very sensitive. And the Corps of Engineers has said no. And it's just a very peculiar set of logic, it seems to me, to not want to act in an emergency, to think about the long-term planning problems of this. There is an environmental catastrophe on our hands here. so the local communities who know this area, who know what needs to be done, have suggested that this would be a good way for them to stop the oil up front, where they can fight it in the open ocean, versus letting it get back into the marshland there, where it becomes very, very hazardous and very, very difficult to absorb and clean up, and it's very detrimental to wildlife.
Congressman Jeff Fortenberry joining us tonight, live from the Gulf on the Lincoln Orthopedic Center hotline. Congressman, you said you were in a Black Hawk helicopter, you were in a boat, and also on a beach where you actually physically picked up the oil. What part of this trip impacted you the most? What did you see that impacted you the most?
Well, certainly when you reach down and you pick up this chocolate-type substance that has heavy, heavy viscosity, it makes all of these pictures real. We also flew in parallel pattern along the coastline here and saw the ribbon of oil that's sitting offshore that could come in at any moment. That's not a thick set of oil, so they can't skim it, but they have had sightings of thick oil about 10 miles out, so with some change of tides and wave action, tidal action, that could land ashore quickly. So they're trying to put a Band-Aid on a gaping wound here. And frankly, what impressed me was just the passion and the will of the people here. These are great Americans who are fighting for their way of life and to protect the environment. And I think the federal government ought to be doing everything they can to help them. So it's one of these peculiar situations where the Corps of Engineers has stalled what seems to me to be a reasonable barrier protection methodology because they're worried about long-term impact.
Congressman, did you see any wildlife struggling yourself?
I actually saw the area of where brown pelicans create their nest. There's probably thousands of birds on one of these marsh islands, and it's double ringed with oil boom so that oil doesn't get on there. We saw dead spots on that island where oil has actually gotten there, and it just kills the grass and makes the environment very problematic for those birds. So while I didn't see one directly myself covered in oil, the emergency response director was telling me that even the dolphins who will swim next to your boat in this area, he's seen them come up covered with